Good to see you all. Welcome to the start of semester and welcome to today's UQRUG. For those who are new, maybe I don't think I see anyone new, but if you're listening to the recording and you're new, UQRUG is a monthly gathering where we get together to help each other solve problems that people have had in R, to share resources and tips, and also to simply just hang out with other people who are using R. So this is our website. It's a website made using R. So if that's something you want to learn about, you can check that out too. But what I'll do now is I will jump on over to our shared collaborative document and we'll get started there. So today, obviously, as per usual, we will be having like the Q&A. If people have things they need help with, you're more than welcome to share your issues. But I'll also be starting today with a little overview, as we are doing each month, sorry. And this month we'll be looking at how to create forms using R. So effectively, what I've done is I've mimicked what you can do with like Google survey sort of stuff, but made it in R. That came out of last month when I asked what people wanted to do as an overview, and we had some suggestions, and I was like, you know what, I'll create a form using R that you can fill out in R to let me know what you want to do. And so today I'll go through that. Get some stuff in the chat. Oh, thank you, Valentina. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and boot up RStudio, see what project I had open last. I don't think it was the current one that I'm working on, but I'll boot up RStudio and I will show you what we've got. So you all would have in the email seen the link I sent around that should take you through to, that's not the right address. That was a test one I was doing, the UQRUG survey. So this is the, there we go. I think the campus Wi-Fi is a little bit slow today, struggling with the amount of people here. So this is the UQRUG overview survey. So this is a Shiny app, as you might notice from the URL up the top there. That's hosted on my personal Shiny app server. And yeah, basically it's a form that you can fill out, choose whatever buttons you want in terms of what you're interested in doing, add extra suggestions, which we did get plenty of, which I was very happy with. And I'm really happy that I did put this together because it pointed out for one user here at UQRUG that of one of the courses that we already do, because there was a request for an overview of something that we do at the library. So I was able to let them know about that. But also just, yeah, some interesting suggestions as to what would be useful for people. And then I did ask if anyone was interested in providing an overview at UQRUG. Nobody did fill that out, and that's okay. I was fishing out there to see who might be interested. But today I'm going to show you how I built this form and how you could do the same if that's something you want to do. Look, to be honest, you're probably better off just using Google Forms or something like that, or SurveyMonkey, but I think it was an interesting exploration. And if you are making a very custom Shiny app or, you know, application where you want to embed a form into that Shiny app, then yes, this would be useful. I think as a standalone form, it's a lot of effort to do something that you can just click at a button and do with Google, unless you're wanting to keep it out of Google, but you'll see that I ended up using Google anyway for part of this platform. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But I think, yeah, I think its big value is embedding it as part of a broader Shiny app. So if you've got some sort of fancy Shiny dashboard that people can interact with, and then you want them to fill out a survey in that at the end, I think that's the big value there, is just embedding that into that survey. So I can see there's something else in the chat, and it's Valentina again on the ball, posting all the links to the things. You can still fill this survey out if you want to. If you already have done so, you don't need to, obviously. So let's go into RStudio and have a look at that. So what do we have open? Oh, no project. Wonderful. Good. Sometimes it launches into some random project I was working on months ago. But let's have a look at our forms. Oh, that random project was related to a question that came up in the chat the other day. Okay, so I've created a couple different apps here. This one here is not the one I've shared with you all. This is just a simple one. No, that's not the right one. Oh, I'm just gonna have to go into my Windows Explorer here. So please bear with me as you see what my file structure looks like. UQRUG, that's what I want, my UQRUG folder. And we've got Shiny form. Cool. All right. This is my reduced project so that it's not as complicated and there's not as much going on there. But it looks like I will need to pull those down from OneDrive because it's currently on OneDrive. All right. So this is the very basic app that I created here, where I just put in some notes as to the process that I used. So if you aren't familiar with Shiny at all, this might be a lot at the start here. But if you are familiar with Shiny, then this should be fairly straightforward. So for those who haven't used Shiny before, we're actually doing a next Monday, I think, at 9:30. Is here at the UQ Library, we're doing a training session on how to use Shiny. Yeah, for those who haven't used Shiny before, I'll just go to the Shiny website, go to the R Studio page. So Shiny basically allows you to create interactive web apps that allow you to do all sorts of different things. So last time when we looked at Flex Dashboard, we mimicked a lot of things that Shiny can do without actually using Shiny. And the reason we were trying to avoid using Shiny is because Shiny requires a very special user interface and server setup. And so you need a special kind of server to run a Shiny app. They do exist, clearly, that's how I was running that R form, but they can have their limitations if you don't have enough storage space and things like that. So last week with Flex Dashboard, we were able to just have a raw HTML file. It was nice and simple and straightforward. But with Shiny, you can do all sorts of really cool interactive things and put filters on, and as Kyle loves being able to put filters on there. But yeah, it's a very, very, very useful little thing there. So what we have here as the basic way that you set up a Shiny server is to load in the apps that you need, load in any extra things that you need to run that particular app. And then from there, you set up the user interface section. So this is the user interface section, the stuff that the user sees. And then you've got the server side of things. And that's kind of like the engine that runs in the background that makes all the interactivity happen within the Shiny server. So that's the broad overview of a Shiny server. Let's dig into what we've done here. So for this form, I decided that I needed to be able to output the inputs that users have given me somewhere. And I decided that the easiest way to do that was to simply use Google Sheets. And I don't know if that's the best option, but it was a fairly straightforward option for me. You could put the outputs to anywhere else, so long you've got the ability to push that output there. So it doesn't have to be Google Sheets. Kind of defeats the purpose of not using Google Forms to use Google Sheets, but you could use probably Excel online if you've got access to that. There's likely a variety of ways that you could interface with it. Google Sheets was just the simplest way that I could learn in less than a month's time, sort of thing. There's a few other packages that I used just to make things a little bit fancier and make it look a bit nicer. But the key things that you need for this are Shiny and Google Sheets 4. So Google Sheets 4 is, as you may have guessed, a sequel to the Google Sheets package, which probably should have been called Google Sheets 3 because it interfaces with the current version of Google Sheets, which is Google Sheets 4. So this first step here basically does a authentication process and allows my my R session here to get access to my personal Google Sheets file. And then it stores that authentication file locally, so that it means that it doesn't have to keep asking for permissions, but it allows me to keep the file that I've shared there completely free and safe. So it means that only I can access it, view this through this way. When I run this line here, so I'll actually just load everything in so we can start running it line by line. Although with a Shiny server, hard to run it line by line because it kind of just loads everything in. But if we have a look at this particular line at least, what this one does is it's going to go to my browser and ask if I want to authenticate that. So that's this tidyverse package here that I then have to give permissions to access. So this is my UQ Gmail account that I've just made for random bits and pieces here at UQ. And then I just have to let it be able to edit my sheets, and then I can hit continue. And that's then going to save that authentication file. So it saves like a little secrets file onto my secrets cache, which is within my Shiny form. And it means that Shiny can now, that R can now access any Google Sheet that I link from my It's UQ Nick Gmail account. So let's have a look at what's actually happening here with the, with the interface side of things. So the interface is what the user sees. So you've all seen the user interface already. It's this page here. So the first thing that I have here is setting the theme. So you can change the color quite easily. If you go to the Boot Swatch website, you can very easily choose different colors and themes. Cerulean is the one that I chose to get this nice blue color and the kind of like the neat little clicky boxes there and just the shape of things. It's purely aesthetic purposes. Without that, it looks a little bit uglier, but it still functions. So next up, we've got, so this is actually, I should point out, this is not actually the full overview survey that I'm showing here. I'm showing a much simplified version of it because it's a bit of a longer kind of app there. I've just kind of kept the key things in there. So this one here is the some tags that you can put in. So if you want to really customize the layout and the theme even further using HTML and CSS, you just need to add like a few tags in here, and then add those details there. And so I can move any of the different sorts of parts of that interface around just by doing some HTML coding. If you've never done CSS or HTML coding, then this is going to look odd to you because it's not R code at all. It's HTML code. So CSS is a cascading style sheet. So it's basically HTML style code. The next bit I've got here is the title panel. So again, this is just a core part of Shiny. So putting a title in this case, this one's going to be called Example Survey. And then we've got the sidebar layout here, which has all of the different questions. So again, this is my massively reduced survey here, where we've got a few different input options. So we've got a checkbox. Oops, that's my break notifier thing. I'm just going to turn my brakes off. So everybody, it's a good idea to have regular breaks from your computer, but not when you're trying to give a session. Yeah, so I've got a checkbox. You've got different choices in that checkbox. We've got a text input option here, and this is that free text, so you can type it in yourself. We've got those radio buttons, so that's where you can only choose one or the other, and that was like that yes, no. And then from that yes, no, I used another panel type called a conditional panel, and that's where if someone had selected yes, then it makes the rest of the form appear. So we've got our checkboxes, we've got our text input here, and then we've got our no and our yes. And as soon as you click yes, that turns on this conditional panel, and then you can then see the next two options as well. The final part of it is the action button, which is a submit button. And so the action button basically makes stuff happen. Car has asked how many lines does the original one have? I will open it up once I've gone through it all. And in fact, we're halfway through seeing how this one works. I think there was probably like 150 lines or something like that. Maybe, I don't know. It wasn't the most elegant bit of code, but it did the thing. The next section we have here is the main panel, which is a necessary part of the Shiny app, but I didn't have anything in the main panel. I purely used the sidebar, but you can add extra content in if you want to. So that's the user interface. So if anyone has any questions about the UI so far, do let me know, but that's the fairly straightforward part of things. The next part is the server. So this is where we get basically what you do is on the input side of things, you input things, and then that puts it through to the server. So in the server, I've created a reactive value. So you need a special kind of value object item in Shiny for it to be able to take new things in. So it can be reactive. And then I've got this observe event here. And this one, basically, it observes the event, which is input submit. So when in the submit button is pressed, this action button, when it's clicked, it goes, oh, an event has happened, now do all these things. So then that's when the input gets read. If any of you did try to submit the form without filling anything in, you would have seen that I'd set up a warning notification to stop you. And that's where this if value comes in here. So if you haven't put anything into the checkboxes, you'll get a notification saying, please select at least one. And it stops it because I've got this requirement that there must be something in there. So it'll both, if it's null, it'll give the user an error message, and it'll also stop the form from being submitted. If I didn't have this part here, I'm pretty sure the form would then get submitted. And it would tell the user, hey, don't do nothing, and then let it happen anyway.
A question here. Can we limit users from filling out multiple forms?
That's an interesting question. So Kaz asked if we can limit users from like basically doing it multiple times.
For example, student ID.
Yeah. So many times. Yeah. So I didn't show it in this one. Maybe I should just jump to the other thing. You're asking all the good questions. How do we know if someone hasn't filled it out multiple times? I mean, this was a pretty low key one. I mean, I was only sending it out to people who are involved in UQRUG. So there was a little bit of good faith in hoping that no one was going to, you know, oh, I really want to see GG dogs get covered and spam that button multiple times. Basically, I haven't put any sort of protection stopping from someone filling it out multiple times. I mean, because that's a hurdle, you know, basically I need some sort of login or some sort of authentication process, that kind of thing. The alternative would be to have a field that says, you know, put in your student ID number here, and then I could check it against the other ones, and you can absolutely do that. So the way that you do that, I think you'd read in the data from Google Sheets, because you can do that. Google Sheets has a read sheet function. And so you can then pull in that data, and then you could just compare what the users inputted with that data. And so it'd be like, if that username is in the Google Sheets already, throw an error and say, hey, you've already filled this out, at which point the user could just change the number. But yeah, in this case, I really didn't want there to be any reason anyone wouldn't fill it out. So that's, for example, why in the main part of the form, I only asked basically these two questions, because I wanted as many answers as I could get. I didn't want someone to look and go, oh, I don't have to put my name in or anything like that. So it's all anonymous. But once I look at the full thing, I will show you some things I put in to catch potential issues of people submitting the form multiple times or anything like that. So I'll show you what that looks like. But I'll keep going with this, and I'll come back to that kind of question. Cool. Right, so if you have filled it out, it'll then do the else. And so the else will then create a tibble for inside of our reactive values section. It will then populate a bunch of variables from all of the different inputs. So we've got the input from the check text box, the text box, the radio box, and then the name and email forms. Now, this is all fairly simple, so it just makes these 5 different variables for the 5 different questions I had there. But I have thrown in this part here. So you will notice that I'm using some regular expression, if you're familiar with that. If you're not familiar with regular expression, this probably just looks like nonsense to you. And if you are familiar with regular expression, it might still look like nonsense because regular expression is a weird one. So this replace all, basically, as much as I did trust everyone to not be dishonest with the form, I also wanted to make sure the form was protected. So what this does is it basically, if you're filling in that open text form, it will strip out anything that isn't a number or a space. That way you can't, I don't know, put illegal characters in and start trying to break my Google Sheet or something like that. I don't think you could have done that anyway, because I think Google Sheets does a bit of stripping of those kind of characters, but you know, I wanted to be extra paranoid there and set it up that way. So for example, you know how in Excel and in Google Sheets, if you put a $sign at the start of the cell, you can start writing a function. I don't want to restart that now. Yeah, you put a $sign and it starts a function in Excel. So had someone put a $sign into the extra form and then it put through that into my Google Sheets, they could have written a function that then goes through into there. And
yeah, I may interrupt a little. Recently, I was cleaning some of the survey data too. It is one of the problems. And when I was given data sheets by my stakeholders, I put it into my R and draw a graph, beautiful. However, there were many comments started with equal or minus.
yeah,
And there are when these comments are started with minus or equal, they will be read as something's null or something.
Formula.
Yeah, formulas.
Yeah.
In Excel instead of showing the entire comments. So when I put that into my R, and in my R, actually their comment disappear.
Yeah.
It just replaced with something's NA or something.
Yes, because minus removes.
Because, so it's not a problem of R anymore. It's just Excel thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I wanted to avoid anyone being able to put equals at the start and start doing something funny in my Google Sheet, because that is an issue on the web, where if you've got an unsecured free text input area, if it's not pulling those free characters out, like, and someone starts with an equals, they can start doing all sorts of weird stuff inside my Google Sheet. So I basically tried to stop that with that. Probably didn't need to, but it was fun to play with anyway. So basically this says only allow letters and numbers. This says only allow spaces, only allow @ symbols, that kind of thing. So what it then does is it will create a tibble from all of those variables that we've just populated above.
And that in survey world, that's called validation.
Validation?
That's validation rules.
Yes. Okay, cool.
For those fields. Because you're only allowing alphanumerical, and the other one you're asking for an email, right? And you want to see an @ Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's validation rules. I think.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what it was called. Yeah, in my experience, so I've got a bit of a web design background, not a huge one, but that's preventing like what's known as injection, and it's where someone injects code into your database to make bad things happen. Yeah, if you're familiar with XKCD, there's a fun little Bobby drop tables joke in that, but we'll keep going. Right, so what it does is it gets all of those different variables that we've then populated there and puts those into a tibble, and we call that tibble new row. And we call it new row because we then use row bind to put that as a brand new row into our data frame that we then append into our Google Sheet. So this is the Google Sheet that then puts the data into. It finishes up by giving the user a notification saying you've successfully submitted the survey. And I've also set it so that the duration is null, so that the survey, that message won't disappear until you close it in case someone misses that message. So this is the very basic app that I created. So this is the simple version. Right, so This is with all the bells and whistles kind of stripped out. We've just got checkbox ABC. We've got the free text question, and then we've got the submit, and that's it. It'll still give you error messages and things like that. But otherwise, that's all good to go. So I can now try and submitting that. I can put in some text. I'll leave that as no, and then click submit. And you can see that the survey has now submitted successfully. If I want to have a look at this now, I can actually go to my Google Doc link here. I wonder if I can go directly from, oh, I can. And you can see here, I've then filled that out, B, text, and no. So this is exactly what I did with our UQRUG one. I'll go to the code for that one now because I wasn't going to show it, but I think it makes sense because Carl was asking questions. So I will go to the full survey code. But it doesn't have things like comments and stuff in it. It's a bit messier in terms of the way the code runs. But in terms of those extra things, you can see that I did a lot more HTML code to get everything to center nicely and sit exactly the way I want it, because it was just being frustrating and fiddly. And I think that's because realistically, the sidebar that I have it sitting inside of is a sidebar. It's supposed to sit on the side. So if I put it in the main panel, it might have looked a bit different, but at that stage, I had already committed to it. So Kaz just shared in the chat that a dummy example that he'd run into, if surveys are allowed to write punctuation at the front of their comments, it comes up as hash name. Yeah, so that stripping those extra characters out can really help avoid that kind of thing. So yeah, so you can see there's a lot more code that I've put in there to make it look prettier. I had that text at the start, with that overview kind of stuff. My questions are a lot lengthier. They're bigger questions. It wasn't just ABC. There was a lot more. So it's a bit messier to look at, but hopefully you can see that that's just the same as the checkbox and text input and so on. But some things I did in the server to avoid that issue that you were talking about before, Carl, of people submitting multiple times, is what I did is I created this is a really simple way of doing like a quick authentication almost, which is when you clicked on the website, the UQRUG survey website, it would create a random number that it then assigns as your session ID, basically. So if you do this run if,
like a form ID,
and I go Control Enter, oh, that's going to push it to the. You can't run commands while a Shiny server is running. And I can't close it because the meeting controls are in the way. There we go. So now that that's closed, I should be able to run that again. So if I run this run if, it gives me a 6-digit value like that. And so if I run it again, it gives me a different 6-digit value. And so basically that was my way of sort of authenticating which user was which, but it's only based on the session. So if you went to that page and then you refreshed it, it would recreate that number. So, but none of you knew that. None of you knew that I'd done that. So if you'd done it on multiple devices, then yes, you would have done that, or done it multiple times after closing it. But yeah, basically what this will do is it will just make a character that is a 6-digit code that is unique to that time that you opened it. And that was my really slack way of doing that. And I'm glad I did that because I did pick up on a couple where someone had clicked it multiple times because something weird had happened. In that case, it was actually Valentina who found that button for me. That was before I put in the "you've successfully submitted" message. I didn't have that previously, and Valentina had clicked submit multiple times and was like, I don't know if it went through. And fortunately, I was able to see that there was like 5 from the one ID, and I knew it was Valentina. So user testing is a very good thing to do before sending things out. But otherwise, the code is effectively the same. The only extra thing that I did was I also created a date field so I could see when someone had submitted their code, their thing. And that's just using the sys_time function. So if I run that, that gives me the current time. Yeah, exactly. Now I did notice that on the server, I think because the server is hosted overseas somewhere, the time was not Australian Eastern Standard Time, and it was off by a few hours. I think it was using UTC time, but I could have put a conversion in there to convert it to AEST, but by that stage I was happy. The form did what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to get more complicated. Yeah, and that's it. And so yeah, there you go. 132 lines. Answer that question before.
Not very big.
No, it's fairly small, and I mean, a lot of those extra lines from this one was me dealing with the styles. So as you can see, these styles take up a bunch of code, and that's just because website styles are quite fiddly to get things to center and the text to do what you want, and it also to be reactive so that when someone's on a different, like if you're moving to a different size mobile device and things like that. I think a lot of this could have been avoided had I not used the sidebar from the very beginning, but at that stage, I was already committed to doing it that way.
Can I ask a question? How many questions are there in your survey?
In my survey, there are, we've got the checkbox input, text input, radio buttons, and then we've got the name, email, and then the topic if you wanted to do one. So 6 total that people could fill out, but you can add as many questions as you want, of course.
Another one, I got survey data clean before. It had 70 questions. 70, so it would be like if I timed it up, it would be like 2,000, 3,000 lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so
This would be fine.
yeah, so in those cases, maybe doing pages, is it possible, to your knowledge, to have like one page and then with 10 questions or 35 and then the second page with all
Yeah, so you can
can
absolutely do this across multiple pages. So last week we looked at with Flex Dashboard, we saw how you could very easily create multiple pages. It's the same thing. You just have the first lot of questions on page 1, and then click to page 2 and have the second lot of questions. You can absolutely do something like that. Yeah. And that's something that I keep coming back to in R, is the really cool thing is the way that you can integrate different stuff. Like last week we looked at Flex Dashboard that had like a map on it, and it had some graphs and things. Well, realistically, using this, you could you know, have that map and graphs. Then you could have a survey that when they fill it out, that then populates those graphs. I didn't get to quite that point this month, but you could realistically do that where once the users filled out the form, that then makes that appear as a graph for them compared to the other results.
Just curious about your workflow after this. So each of the time of my data, it will be generate one CSV file.
Yes, so this makes one CSV. So
if there are 100 students, there will be there will be 100 CSV files.
no, so
Entries, sorry.
yes, so
CSV entries.
with this particular one, so I've used, so this sheet append here, this is a function lock is not on. This is a Google Sheets 4 function which appends a row to a sheet. So it's not creating a new CSV or a new sheet. It's just getting that row and adding it onto the existing sheet.
Only one.
Yeah, I mean, you could change it to, instead of doing sheet append, you could make it do new sheet. I can't remember what the function is, but it's something along those lines to make a new sheet, which you could do. Or you can make a whole new Google Sheets document as well. There's a lot of customizability. In this case, I just wanted it to stick a new row onto Google Sheets. Yeah, so yeah. The other end of the Google Sheets for programming is the read sheet option. So in this case, we can use read sheet. And so that will then pull that data in. And then this is the data responses that I've received from everybody online. So what we could do now is, and this is going to get a bit messy because I'm just going to put it in here. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be bad. I'm going to create a new sheet so it's not a big mess. So if I get that data and I pipe that into a ggplot, and then we go aesthetics where, you know what, this realistically, I should just be able to, if I just go, what am I trying to do here? Yeah, if I just do hist data overview, X must be numeric. I need a count.
Well, what's overview?
So what I was going to do is plot the number of responses. So
Plot factor, as in plot bracket, bracket, and then
so plot bracket factor,
Yeah.
bracket. Does plot by default not show?
I can't remember the place.
so it's a bit wide.
Yeah, okay. But we can see that the top one is spatial maps in R. So we do have, I think that's actually above that, but anyway. Cool, there you go. So looks like a lot of people wanted a lot of different things, which is very much fair enough.
I pick all.
You picked all of them? Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's, look, I didn't want it to be a vote and be like, oh, but my second favorite didn't get chosen. You know, I hate that kind of voting. This is a, what's your most, like, which is your least favorite that you want to hear? And it was, whatever this one was.
The special maps you are using, are you using leaflet?
So,
Leaflet package.
I guess that's what we're going to do next month. The people have chosen. We'll have a look at spatial maps in R. So that's really cool. Making this form was useful in the end. So this actually will kind of tie in with our connection to some other UQ groups. So I'm part of the UQ, on UQ, we've rebranded actually, we're just we're a geospatial community, and we just help out with a variety of different things. And yeah, there's been a lot of movement towards using R. So I'll probably have a look at TMap, which is a very simple R package for making maps. Then we've also got things like SF, which is simple features, allows you to do a lot. I think a lot of these use leaflet and things like that as well. We got packages like raster, which is another good one, and another one called Terra. So as with R, there's always a lot of different things. So I will probably boil it down to creating quite a simple map in each of those different packages and talk about the different advantages of them. Yeah, depending on how that goes, we might get a guest in to talk, but I will keep it simple to start with. Yeah, I've got some colleagues who are a lot more well versed in doing mapping and spatial analysis in R. But it's something I want to learn more of. So thank you everyone for choosing spatial maps in R. It's something I've been wanting to be able to put some more time into learning.
Maybe there was some repeat voting there. No, Nick?
Not by me. Other people may have done repeat voting, but I definitely didn't.
Joking. GG dogs, all those votes are mine. I'm joking.
Oh yeah. GG dogs. Trying to think how I should just be able to use count to count.
You're bugged by the.
Use ggplot.
Yeah, as I was saying before, my brain is not with me today.
Table.
What's that?
Table function.
If I go table here.
If you don't need count.
Any count? Thank you. I think I'm able to recite stuff that I think it'll do. Should give us what I need. So there you go. There are 11 people who voted for spatial maps in R. Everything else got 8 except for custom Shiny themes and BSlib because that's a confusing thing. I actually talked briefly about custom Shiny themes with BSLib. That was the bootstrap, the kind of the theming that I did on it, where I used Cerulean as the theme. So yeah, it looks like everyone is quite keen on everything, which is cool, but some standouts for spatial maps in R. That said, I haven't checked that data to see if someone did multiple versions of a response, which is definitely possible. But the other field in the R was extra overviews. So if we have a look at extra overviews. So we got some other requests. The numbers here don't actually make sense. So locally hosted Shiny apps, data mining from PubMed, G computation. Oh, that's nice. Machine learning, creating packages in R, parallelizations of functions and loops, principal component analysis, and statistical analysis. So yeah, a wide variety of different suggestions of things. I might do this every month. I might send out a survey of like, what do you want to do next month? And so I think I might do that. Just create effectively the same survey that points at a different Google Sheet. And just, yeah, ask, what do you want to do next month? And that way we can keep it nice and democratic. Because yeah, I did really appreciate seeing all the responses I got, especially those who like, as I sent the email out, I'm looking at the Google Sheet and I see some come in. And so that was very fun for me. Yeah, so next time, so that'll be end of March. So we're looking at what, the 29th of March, we'll do a spatial mapping in R overview.
Just an idea. What if you were to keep using the same, would it be okay? Is it possible to timestamp answers? And that way you keep using the same Google Sheet that you were using? I'm just thinking of the actual survey stuff that you were showing.
I can definitely, I have timestamp.
That could be, oh, okay, and they're timestamp. Okay, well, cool, okay, nice.
So yeah, I could keep using the same thing and just filter them out by time. So it's not a big deal.
Okay.
One thing I did flirt with in terms of something I was going to do was I was going to make the survey responsive to the answers that people gave. So initially I was going to make it so that if you put extra overview answers in, so if you'd put any answers into the, is there anything else you'd like to see more of? I was going to then make that feedback into these questions up here. But I decided against that because once I started seeing some of the answers people were giving coming, I was like, that's not going to work. But that was why I did ask people to put a comma between the different suggestions, is because I was like, cool, I'll just auto populate it that way. And then people can then answer other people's requests. But I'm glad I didn't, because it would have caused a lot of problems, I think. But it's cool that I could have done that, I think, is how I felt like, and it would have just auto updated those once people put them in. But yeah, I saw that quickly getting out of control. So before I clicked, I wrote the code for it and then didn't actually let that code run. And I'm glad I did that, because I'm glad I waited on that just to see what answers came through. So yeah, that's how to create surveys in R. And yeah, hopefully that proves useful to you. As I said at the start, I don't imagine this would replace using something like, I don't know, SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. But if you do have an output to somewhere that's not Google Sheets, so if this is a locally hosted server, then it can be quite useful. And I know that for a fact because I have colleagues who work in different industries that also use Shiny, and they have local Shiny servers where they do need people using their Shiny things to fill it out, and then that populates a CSV file on their server. So it's like an in-house survey system that doesn't have to go onto Google servers or whoever's servers, and so it is valuable from that perspective. You can make those surveys quite private that way. Obviously, this one's going through Shiny Apps. That's, as I was saying, is probably hosted on some survey overseas, which is why I was very intentionally not asking for too much detail. But they're secure servers. I just didn't want to need people to put all that extra stuff in. But yeah, thank you for indulging me and playing with surveys that way. And hopefully it is useful to some of you out there.